heard the paramedic say her name before she ever came into view, but it was the expression on his face that made my stomach knot. It held pity, exhaustion, and something else. Something he clearly hoped he wouldn't have to explain to a man standing alone in a hospital hallway at 2:17 a.m. "Sir, your wife is stable," he told me. "But there's something you need to know." The words sent an icy shudder straight through me. In that instant, I had no clue that the hours ahead would dismantle everything I believed about loyalty, love, and the woman I had spent 10 years building a life with. I never could have imagined that whatever waited behind that thin curtain would cut so deep that weeks later, retelling it on my channel would feel like reopening a wound with bare hands. But let me rewind to that moment, when I still believed she loved only Mia. I had been asleep when the hospital called. My phone lit up the darkness with that cold, sterile blue glow that always feels like a warning. "Is this Daniel Reyes?" a voice asked. "Yes," I replied, my throat already tight. "This is St. George Medical Center. Your wife has been admitted." My heart lurched. "My wife? What happened?" I asked, panic seeping in. They refused to give details, urging me only to come right away. I drove through deserted streets, the city unnaturally quiet, broken only by the thunder of my own heartbeat. She had told me she'd be working late, that a sudden deadline had come up. Around midnight, I'd even texted her to check in. She responded with a heart emoji, promising she'd be home late. I clung to that tiny digital comfort like a lifeline, not knowing how empty it truly was. When I reached the ER, the nurse at the desk gave me the same look the paramedic would echo moments later, sympathy mixed with hesitation. Like I was the last person who deserved this news, and yet the one who most needed to hear it. "She's in room 6, the nurse said gently. "Someone is already with her." That phrase felt wrong. Someone. With my wife. 2 in the morning. I pulled back the curtain and stopped cold. She was lying on the bed, pale and drained, and sitting beside her was a man I had never seen before. The second I stepped in, he jumped to his feet, guilt blazing across his face. "My wife, Emily?" I said hoarsely. "Oh my God," she whispered. "Daniel, wait." I swallowed hard. "Who is he?" My voice shook despite my effort to steady it. Neither of them answered. The silence thickened, heavy and airless. Finally, the man spoke. "I should leave."
"No, isnapat."
"You stay. Someone needs to explain why my wife is in a hospital bed with you at her side." Emily buried her face in her shaking hands. When she looked up, her eyes were red. Whether from pain, exhaustion, or guilt, I couldn't tell. I felt all of it anyway. The truth was coming, and I wasn't prepared. Before she could speak, a doctor entered. He took one look at the three of us and sensed the tension immediately. "Mr. Reyes," he said to me, "your wife had a severe allergic reaction, enough to cause breathing difficulties." I stared at him, stunned. An allergic reaction? To what? She doesn't have allergies. The doctor hesitated, and in that pause, the weight on my chest grew unbearable. He explained that Emily had mentioned recently developing a sensitivity to latex. The symptoms began shortly afterward, and he stopped himself. He didn't need to say more. I already understood. Latex, and something inside me tore slowly and painfully, like a thread being pulled straight out of my chest. The other man spoke quietly. "I didn't know she was allergic." "She didn't either," I replied flatly, staring at him. "So you two were..." Emily collapsed into sobs. "Daniel, I'm so sorry. I didn't think any of this would happen." I looked at her. "You didn't think what would happen? Ending up here? Or me finding out?" The doctor, wisely, slipped out of the room, leaving us in a silence that felt like cold steel. "How long?" I asked, my voice barely holding. "How long has this been going on?" Her shoulders sagged. 5 months. The word struck like a punch. 5 months. 5 months of lies. 5 months of late nights and excuses that had sounded perfectly normal. I let out a short, bitter laugh. "And now you're here because you had an allergic reaction while you were with him." She winced at my bluntness. "It wasn't supposed to happen like this," she said. "I was lonely. You were distant. Work was hard." He listened. "So this is my fault." I cut in. "I'm not saying that," she whispered. "I wasn't thinking straight." I turned to the other man. "Are you married?" He shook his head.
"No."
And I didn't know at first that she was. When I found out, I tried to end it. She said things were complicated. Emily covered her face again. "I ruined everything. I messed up so badly. I wanted to scream, to throw something, to shatter anything within reach. But none of it came. Just a crushing, suffocating weight in my chest." "You were with him," I said quietly. "And the hospital called me, your husband, to come help you." The irony burned. I was the one who rushed here. I was the one who cared. And she was the one who broke us. She kept apologizing, again and again, as if repetition could mend a wound she'd been carving open for months. but something inside me had already snapped clean in two. I'm glad you're okay, I said softly. I truly am, but I'm done. Her tears fell harder. Daniel, please, I can fix this. I can. I shook my head.
No.
You had 5 months to think about what you were doing. I didn't even get 5 seconds. The other man stared at the floor, heavy with guilt. But he wasn't my concern. He hadn't made vows to me. She had. I'll get my things tomorrow, I told her. Stay with him. Stay with anyone. I just can't stay with someone who destroys me and calls it an accident. As I turned to leave, she reached for me weakly. Daniel, don't go home alone tonight. I paused just long enough to answer. I've been alone for months. I just didn't know it yet. Then I walked out of the ER. The doors slid open, as if the world were clearing space for a version of me I didn't recognize. One who would never go back to who he was before. If you're still here, thank you for listening. This wasn't easy to share then, and it isn't easy now. But someone out there needs to hear it. Heartbreak doesn't end you. Betrayal doesn't last forever.